Hi, I'm Dr. Larry Kuhn. Let's consider what an individual, team, or company can do to promote well-being and create meaning. You know, there are many factors that give rise to well-being. However, unless we know how to connect with people and connect people with meaning, we will spin our wheels as individuals, teams, and companies, kind of just going through the motions and losing both a personal and collective motivation. Creating meaning for ourselves or with other people will require three intentional and essential ingredients, and they all relate to awareness. The first step is gaining personal insight. Insight is inherently personal, and it is acquired through self-reflection and assessment, those two pieces. Launching a collaborative journey within AspireVue, both a supervisor and their direct report can reflect and more deeply connect with their traits, thinking, values, emotional awareness or intelligence, and purpose, looking specifically at their patterns of private activities within themselves. We call it that thing I do, viewing the patterns from a second level, kind of stepping outside of yourself and being able to observe yourself objectively. That's the first level of insight. What is going on within? Next, we shift to build awareness of what is going on between people. I like to call that outside, and there's really two aspects of that. Outside involves looking outside of yourself and your situation. First, on one hand, through perspective gathering. Perspective gathering means becoming intentionally curious about your reputation, nurturing the capacity for finding out how are other people experiencing you. The other aspect of outside involves, on the other hand, perspective taking. Instead of perspective gathering, where you're looking at how others are experiencing you, perspective taking means connecting with others, nurturing awareness of them, and asking, what are your thoughts? What are your beliefs and feelings and ideas and your experiences? How are you? What are you doing? What's important to you? The final ingredient of personal insight is what I call foresight or purpose. This is where an individual intentionally shifts their focus to look around themselves. So we've looked within, we've looked between, what's going on between people and relationships, and then we look at the context, what's going on around themselves, and to find how their purpose fits into that larger picture. Again, connecting to something outside of yourself. If you're a supervisor, this might involve asking your direct report if they might be willing to share their workplace well-being survey results with you, or perhaps asking them to complete and share their signature purpose statement found under my profile within AspireVue. This moves us to consider purpose and meaning beyond hedonism, self-absorption, and the happiness trap that we've talked about, extending ourselves for our own or another's well-being. Engaging in insight, outsight, and foresight as a supervisor, what you can expect if you do these things is to connect with a more sustainable motivation that doesn't sputter out or evaporate over time. Beyond the work of enhancing insight, outsight, and foresight, the next step beyond insight is action. That's the second phase that I recommend in our approach. I often offer several recommendations, but you can decide. First, we suggest that leaders and HR professionals view well-being as a facilitated journey. I love that, a facilitated journey where we resource humans for growth. Promoting well-being is not an initiative. It's not something that we do to people with a program. Creating well-being as a mindset encompasses both employee performance and development priorities, pulling for both enhanced functioning and flourishing, not as separate and standalone sets of initiatives. Viewing well-being as a facilitated journey suggests that we must begin with the end in mind. Where are we headed in terms of well-being and well-doing? What does that look like for each person, for each team? There are as many variations as there are people, but the same framework can be nicely engaged in. Next, I think it's useful to see ourselves as facilitators of meaning. Facilitative action will likely include an intentional dialogue with the other, and that means for leaders that they can easily begin paying attention to and modeling conversational leadership through casual discourse. Here's what I mean. I often like asking questions. Meeting someone for the first time, what do we typically say? Usually it's, "Hey, how you doing? What's your name? What do you do?" Notice how these very familiar prompts immediately focus our attention on doing and not necessarily being or even well-being. It's informational. Even when we move deeper and get more personal, it often again focuses simply on getting more information like this. How was your weekend? What did you do? Or, what have you been up to? How are you doing? That's often the kind of discourse that happens within one-on-one dialogue between supervisors and direct reports, and particularly during performance review time. What are you doing? Let's evaluate that. No wonder people often feel under the microscope our language creates a misconnect right from the outset. But we can move deeper. If there's a bit more curiosity when we're interested beyond information and utility, the discourse shifts. Not just what are you doing, how are you? Notice the shift from what's being produced to the person. How are you? And then listen and reflect what is going on within them. This is part of outsight that we call perspective taking. What are your thoughts? What are your beliefs? What are your feelings about that? What are your ideas or what are your concerns? Again, the focus shifts into what's going on within them. That's connecting with their internal experiences without judgment. It's neither right nor wrong. It simply describes, and you don't even have to agree with it. Reflecting it back is connecting with them and giving that sense that you get them, and their defenses begin to lower. At performance review time, that's pretty important. This type of casual discourse can frame a deeper connection beyond the utility of a worker's productivity. Many times our relationships are based around utility, and it's not really a connection. We also can be interested in and casually ask, what do you think you're capable of? It's very different than a typical performance review. Lip service is one thing, but as facilitators of well-being with teams and organizations, we must prioritize individualized development. One of my favorite theorists, Erik Erikson, identified progressive stages of focused development across the human lifespan. These same stages kind of seem relevant to our discussion today as we encourage you to consider building intentional communities of well-being that prioritize the needs of employees, using whatever resources and tools we can find at our disposal to explore where our direct reports and colleagues are at along their life cycle journey within the organization. It's kind of interesting. Think about an employee that first connects with your organization. They onboard, and the first thing that they're really establishing is trust. Is it safe here? If we have a conversation, is it going to remain confidential? And then they begin to build autonomy and interdependence. They make connections with people. Then there's initiative. They begin to consider, well, what am I going to do? And how can I do that well? Then there's industry that they begin to produce. We like to measure time to value. How many days does it take that person in the supervisor's mind to be able to move from just starting out to actually hitting their full stride? That's industry. Then there's identity, the emergence of role clarity. That happens in human development, in the adolescent stage, and it also happens within the workplace. As an individual finally gets their own sense of identity and kind of becomes established, and others begin to see them in that role, not just as a newbie, but someone who is actually capable of making an impact. Then there's intimacy, that sense of connection, that we move deeper than just informational or utility exchange, but actually are having a deeper level of connectivity. Eventually, as the maturity continues within the employee life cycle, they move toward generativity. This is Erickson's model, but it also reflects as that person moves toward maturity within the workplace. Are they creating meaning and growth with other people? Are they extending themselves not only for their own, but another's growth? And then finally, integrity, where they discover real influence. They begin to be seen as a go-to person, not just a producer. That's where leadership begins to emerge. Next, we think of this as being essential: to have a vocabulary and language to parse out different facets of what we call well-being identifiers. Those are embedded within the well-being survey. When we assess for well-being and well-doing, we can discover where people are based on how they respond. Here's an example of the types of well-being identifiers that we explore. And you can do this with your direct report as well. We first can explore autonomy. That's a statement like, I, not others, decide most of the time what I will or will not do. How does that person sense their level of autonomy? The greater sense of autonomy, the greater sense of well-being. We can also unpack engagement, of course. Like a statement like this, they may endorse, I get fully absorbed in activities and feel energized in most things that I do. I get excited when I work on something. That's about engagement. Other areas of exploration in the well-being survey include focusing on mastery. That means I can use my skills. I learned something new yesterday or today, and learning is important. I have a sense of accomplishment that I'm achieving most of my goals. Or if we're at the low end of the spectrum, I'm not getting anything done and I'm spinning my wheels. There's also a sense of self-efficacy. The statements that are endorsed, I can succeed if I put my mind to it. And I feel confident that I can deal with the unexpected. I believe that I am capable of most things. Again, that's a higher level on the spectrum of a self-rating. There's also self-worth, which is a little bit different than self-efficacy, where self-efficacy focuses on what can I do and how can I manage things? Am I up to what it takes? Self-worth looks more at I feel valuable and worthwhile. My efforts contribute as being important for others. So the well-being survey really taps into a person's lived sense of reality and their sense of meaning and purpose, not just what they produce. Some of the statements, as an example, my life has a clear sense of purpose and I've found satisfactory meaning, and I know what gives meaning to my life. Not everybody is at that higher level, and they're on that journey. Asking about that can be really, really impactful. It also looks at their sense of optimism or lack thereof. A statement like this, I am optimistic about my future. I have a positive outlook and I expect more good than bad things to happen in my life. Consider this. What would it mean to you as a direct report or a team member to hear a statement like this from your supervisor? This is an organization, not a family. It's not my job to fix you or soothe you if you're upset. But you know what? Your needs matter to me. That's a type of connection that also says, I'm not going to take responsibility for managing you. I believe in your capacity to manage yourself, but you know what? Your needs matter. What else can supervisors do to promote well-being? Well, when we take action, moving beyond a solid, developed awareness, to look at next steps, we can become incremental, moving past just insight to action to create small and frequent wins. James Clear, one of my favorite authors on habits, suggested regarding goals to focus just on a 1% improvement. Here's a personal anecdote. I follow B.J. Fogg's advice from Stanford. And here's what I mean about being incremental. To be healthy, my doctor suggests that I should drink 2 to 3 liters of water every day. There's no way that I can possibly stay motivated to hit that goal. Instead, you know how I do it consistently? I've made it my goal not to drink 2 liters every day. Instead, my goal is simply this: to fill my glass every time that I walk into the kitchen or walk by a water fountain. Put a little lemon in it, and then I have it right here when I'm doing my meetings. I can sip on it and I don't even realize it. I've done it and I haven't had to gag it down. And you know what? I hit my goal consistently. And beyond that, I feel really good about hitting my goal. I created a small win, and that's incremental. What else can we do to promote well-being? Well, next, we can be intentional. Productive people aren't productive by accident. We have a goal. Let's say my goal is to fill a bucket with rocks. I have a goal. I can measure my progress. How full is that bucket becoming? Within AspireVue, we have progress records that we can show, and we can see the progress we're making. But here's the other thing. Is it meaningful to me? Yes, I have rocks. I have a goal. I'm moving along that goal. But is it really meaningful? That is the key in terms of facilitating a journey, is the supervisor's role in helping tie the goal that is currently worked toward to the known value drivers of that individual, because it has to be meaningful for them. Again, when we neglect meaning, we begin to focus on filling our lives with pleasure. When we focus on meaning, now we have purpose. That's where AspireVue journeys can really be helpful. I believe that supervisors and employees alike can build conditions for flourishing, intentionally setting the conditions for success without being prescriptive. Let's say that you want to lose weight. Have you ever tried telling someone that they need to lose weight? How did that go? We need to ensure that we are not eliciting resistance to the very things that we're promoting. That's why we need to provide tools, along with an environment for success. The tools are not sufficient. You got to own them and make them work. Next, supervisors and colleagues can encourage the use of individual development plans. Those exist within AspireVue. OKR goals, like those within AspireVue's goal setting, need to be positively stated, strength-based, not deficit-based, small, incremental, measurable, and specifically tied to a delivery date. Without that, there's no real accountability. For example, instead of a goal to lose weight, make it a goal about being healthy. And that's kind of general, but then we have key results, and that's where we drill in. For example, if I want to be healthy, the key results to that goal might be to eat carrots 3 times a week for the next 30 days. Or I could have an additional key result that says, I'm going to take 10,000 steps a day 3 times a week for the next 30 days. Then we prioritize that personal goal, not just operational outcomes, to balance well-being with well-doing. Social factors are huge, so consider how to leverage functioning and flourishing recognition wisely. Keep in mind, people are highly motivated to look good in front of others, and even more highly motivated not to look bad. Shame or avoidance is not a good motivator to promote sustainable well-being, but certainly recognizing success goes a long way toward pulling for the types of growth and performance outcomes that we say that we value. Next, Don't fall into the trap of just white-knuckling it, relying solely on intention, grit, and will. There certainly are seasons when we have to move beyond just running on our own enthusiasm and waiting for the feeling, and really just step it up to keep a commitment. But we've got to be careful about not losing momentum. Experiencing ongoing frustration can actually cause us to build resentment toward the actual goals, as well as the values that we may really care about. Instead of white-knuckling it, if something isn't working, consider that it may be the system that we're using, not the person. Perhaps we need to course correct and get another perspective. Next, it's very wise on any journey to begin with the end in mind. Don't launch into an action. Don't jump in and set goals, beginning with goals or behavioral change as the initial step. If you're a supervisor, begin by helping your direct report to grasp a vision of themselves at their best. Yes, it is aspirational and not highly operational, but we need for them to get that firmly in place before setting any goals together. Encourage your people to select 5 core aspirational identities that will pull rather than push the behavior that you're wanting to see. That's a tool that we've built into the behavioral journey, self-reflection. So go to Development, Journeys, select Behaviors, and there's self-reflection that comes right up there. Then we can get clarity about the identity that we're having as an end result. That's our destination. And then connect it back to the behavior and frame it like this. At my best, I'm the type of person who, and that's what that tool does in the journeys area. For example, at my best, I'm an exerciser who takes the stairs instead of the elevator. Or, see, it's calling for a behavior. I'm an exerciser who sets out my shoes and work clothes at night before I get up to work out the next morning. A small incremental action step connected to an identity that I'm hoping and aspiring to become. Continuing to consider what we can do to promote well-being, remember there are 3 elements and priorities that always need to be present. We've talked about building insight through reflection and assessment. That means becoming intentional. Second, we've discussed taking action. Having a good system to operationalize it, to set goals and translate our insight and intention into specific actions. Finally, we need to focus on building momentum. Think about, how do we keep this moving? This is about creating habits that make it sustainable. Momentum must be anchored to support, not compliance. You want to squelch it, make it a compliance issue. We don't need more or even better goals, to be truthful. We need better systems that facilitate growth and action. Those systems must include support from outside of ourselves. We have to hook to something beyond our current situation. Otherwise, it just remains subjective. That can come in the form of soliciting 360 reputation feedback. That's perspective gathering from people who are willing to be candid and honest with us. It doesn't have to be a whole bunch of people, just a few folks that we really trust who know us well and who are interested in supporting our growth and development and not just telling us nice things. That support can also come in the form of a mentor or an external coach. I do a lot of coaching. And our purpose as a coach, or even just being a good enough supervisor for that matter, is to help people on their journey, to build insight, to set actionable goals, to create wins, and to facilitate growth by making that sustainable. We believe that each person is a creative, resourceful, whole person and capable of growth and excellence, regardless of their limitations. Finally, think about the context of your own growth and discovery of purpose and meaning. Whether you're a supervisor or an employee, we want to create an experience for ourselves and provide that to others, places where they feel safe, environments that are conducive toward growth and success. If I'm wanting to eat healthy, perhaps meeting with friends at the fast food place down the street is not the best place for us to meet for lunch. What are the changes within the environment that we need to make that can make that conducive, safe, and make growth, allow it to happen? How do you best initiate those changes? How can we best sustain them? Often, assuming a coaching or mentoring role or engaging a coach as an external resource is the best way to really build momentum. The function of coaching is this: to question, to clarify, to encourage, to support, and to resource. Can we do it on our own? Yes. Will we? Research has shown probably not. If we really want to be successful, maybe a coach is the way to go. With a coach, even if you have to pay for them yourself, there's accountability. And you share with them your identity and your goals. Make that connection. They can help you socialize your goals with others and create successes. In sum, we've got to see results, and we need better delivery systems to create sustainable momentum and well-being. Well-being is a journey, and every journey has two things. First, a destination. Begin with the end in mind. What are you capable of? Second, there's a current state. Where are we right now? And that involves self-reflection, assessment, and insight. In this series, we've talked about recent trends in well-being and the thinking about well-being and well-doing, flourishing and functioning, as well as the three phases to promote well-being within an organization or team or an individual. Gaining insight, number one. Sharing some simple ways to evaluate your own well-being. Taking action, number two. We've suggested some alternatives to the white-knuckle approach. And then number three, building momentum. Finding resources and engaging with those to make it sustainable by connecting to other people outside of ourselves. We can all play a role in facilitating well-being, helping people discover and connect with their aspirational identities. People must have their own identity and aspirations. It's not the organization's job to provide these, but we can help them discover that and cultivate that. What people really need is insight, action, goals, and momentum, and a system to facilitate that journey. Now you've got a tool to help you with that. Thanks for connecting.